So President Trump and Vladimir Putin officially departing Alaska after a 3.5-hour meeting. No ceasefire has been reached. We know that. But both parties say great progress towards peace was made. They said really nice things about each other, too. But what exactly happened? We're still trying to piece it all together. A man who's got a lot of experience in all this and knows the stakes joins us now. Retired Air Force General and Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, General Philip Breedlove, and Heritage Foundation former advisor to policy advisor under Margaret Thatcher, Nile Gardiner. Can we start with you, General? From what we know right now, the president says there'll be another round, but there is no ceasefire. That's what we've concluded.
So I think that we're going to have to pay real attention to what our president says across the next couple of days, because he was very clear before that if there's no ceasefire, there's no second meeting. And now we've got to figure out what all that means. And again, we are now past the deadline for the sanctions. And we'll have to see what our president decides on how he uses the sanctions to bring Mr. Putin back in a more likely way of finding agreement.
So I don't know the tone and tenor inside the meeting, but outside the meeting, now, Gardner, I think it's pretty clear. Vladimir Putin wanted to make sure this relationship lasted. You didn't see any cold shoulder. You saw a warm handshake, a comment evidently when they met when he said, it's good to see you and it's good to see you alive, in reference to maybe the assassination attempt. But the UK, the EU, NATO allies, some of them were nervous up until Wednesday and they had a chance to speak to the president. How do you think they feel now?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Brian. And I thought actually this was a very good summit for President Trump. He looks very statesmanlike. He projected real strong American leadership. And I think across the Atlantic, among our NATO friends and partners, I think they will be very reassured actually by this the summit today. There were no concessions made whatsoever to the Russian side. I thought that Putin was actually very deferential towards President Trump, and that was a very, I think, significant development there. And I think what we are seeing right now, Brian, is the strong projection of American global leadership and power on the world stage with President Trump. That's a big positive. The NATO alliance is far stronger today as a result of US leadership following a very successful summit in The Hague. And so I do think across the Atlantic, our NATO allies will be reassured, I think, by today's summit. And also, without any doubt, the United States is the leader of the free world. Only President Trump could force Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table, and that's what we've seen today, actually, and that's real leadership coming from the United States with President Trump.
I agree. General, I think one of the goals of Vladimir Putin, he thought that I could divide President Trump's administration from NATO, from the EU, from the UK, and let them handle it themselves. And he tried to talk about the history of our relationship with our countries, because really we had World War II and then we had 50 years of the Cold War. But that's not going to happen. The president seems to me tighter with NATO than ever before, with our European allies than ever before. And I think he's got two cards to play especially. More sanctions, and the arms are going to continue to flow. So if the Russians were hoping for relief or an end, the Ukrainians don't quit and they're going to have arms.
Well, let me agree with you in that latter matter for sure. The president has a lot of cards he can play now. Mr. Putin did not cooperate in this meeting. That is very, very clear. I think that there were a lot of pleasantries said in the remarks and things, but the fact of the matter is the raison d'etre of this meeting did not occur, and now we have to figure out how to move on from that. And I think that the president has tools that he should and could bring immediately into play to signal to Mr. Putin that this was not the appropriate end to this meeting.
He said we didn't get there, the president said, but we did have a productive meeting, and we agreed on many points. And Vladimir Putin said, I hope that Europe and Ukraine don't throw a wrench. That was the translation, or it seems like an American saying, throw a wrench into what we've agreed on, which is still somewhat of a mystery. Listen to another warning or hope from Vladimir Putin. Let's listen.
To make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict, and we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole.
That's part of the Russian myth. Let's get rid of some of basically the underlying problems that caused this conflict. The underlying problem is Vladimir Putin who caused this conflict. But Nile, be more diplomatic than that.
Well, I think the reality is the Russians are 100% responsible for the war in Ukraine, and it's Putin's savagery and barbarism that has resulted in this conflict. And I think that President Trump is absolutely right to threaten very severe economic consequences for the Russians if they do not end the war. And President Trump is someone who actually delivers on his promises here. And I think that's something that Putin increasingly understands here. He's not dealing with Joe Biden or weak-kneed Barack Obama. He's dealing with President Trump, who's a far, far tougher and stronger American leader who means what he says. And I think that Putin understands, of course, the perilous situation right now. If the Russians decide to defy, I think, the will of the U.S. president, there will be massive consequences, especially for the Russian economy.
I agree. I mean, you might say, well, the Russians got a delay. Okay, congratulations, by a week or two. But the president has already proven, if you look at his actions in Iran, he's not going to drag this out. General, great to get your insight, even though we have a lot of questions still about what happened. And now, Gardiner, great perspective, global perspective.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.